Have you ever sat down to learn something new and just not known where to start? Or maybe you do start, and a few days later, you've already fallen out of it. I think a lot of people quietly struggle with this, not because they're lazy or not talented or they can't learn, but because no one really shows you how to approach a new skill in a way that actually fits your life, especially as an adult. So in this video, I want to show you how I personally learn new skills, not in a complicated way or overwhelming way, but just a simple, structured system that I use to help me stay consistent and actually get better over time. First of all, you need to make your first step something you can actually do. When people say they want to learn something new, they often describe it in a very broad way, like I want to learn coding, or I want to learn piano, or I want to learn cooking. But those aren't real starting points, they're just ideas. So instead of staying in that space of watching other people do it or thinking about it or just getting stuck in how to even begin, I bring it down to one simple, clear action, something that I can sit down and do immediately. So if it's coding, I'll open my laptop and write something small myself. If it's piano, I'll just sit down and play a small piece that I enjoy. If it's coding, I'll just follow one simple recipe and cook something simple for people that I care about, The important part is that I'm not being passive. I'm not just consuming. I'm just doing something from the beginning and being active from day one, because that shift from just watching others doing it to you doing it removes a lot of hesitation and procrastination. You're no longer waiting to feel ready. You've already begun that thing. And once that fear of starting is gone, it becomes much easier to come back to it. And when you do come back, you don't just jump into something overwhelming. You just take one slightly bigger step than before. That's how the skills builds naturally and without pressure. So the second tip is to rely on repetition, not motivation. I don't depend on motivation to learn something new anymore because motivation changes all the time. Some days you feel focused and ready, and other days, especially on slower, gloomy days in the UK, you just don't feel like doing it, like at all. And I've learned not to fight that too much. Instead, I rely on something much simpler. Just show up, For example, recently, I've been learning Pilates on the mat, and honestly, there are days when I really don't feel like doing it. So instead of just waiting to feel motivated, I just tell myself, just do a short session, and that's enough. Sometimes it's just a 10-minute video, nothing intense or perfect, but I still show up because that's actually how I build my skills over time. Not by doing everything perfectly, but by coming back to it again and again in a way that feels manageable. And over time, those small sessions starts to add up and it feels easier and more familiar and more natural. So I don't focus on how I feel that day. I focus on whether I showed up even in a small way, because that's what actually makes the difference. There's always a stage when you're learning something new where it just doesn't make sense yet. And I think this is where most people quietly give up because it feels uncomfortable. For example, if I'm learning something technical, like a new concept in coding, I might read it once and not fully understand it. Before I would think, why am I not getting this? Now I approach it differently. I expect that the first time won't be clear, obviously. So instead of rushing past it, I stay with it in a very simple way. Like I might read it again slowly, come back to it the next day, then try it myself, then watch some tutorials. Maybe I get it wrong, that's fine. Then I go back and look at it again. The same with something like Pilates. If I'm learning a new movement and it feels awkward or I can't get the form right, I don't stop immediately. I repeat it a few times, I adjust slightly, I pay attention to how it feels, and gradually my body starts to understand it. Not instantly, but over a few attempts. And that's the part people often rush. They want to feel clear straight away. But most skills don't work like that. So now when something feels confusing, I don't take it personally. I just recognize it as part of the process. It simply means I haven't spent enough time with it yet. And that makes it much easier to stay patient and keep going. Find a way of learning that actually suits you. This is something I noticed from reading the comments on my previous videos. People picked up on the fact that I tend to learn in a fairly structured way. I usually like to understand the basics first, like I watch a few videos, get a sense of the foundations, and then I'll start practicing and adjusting from there. That's just how I naturally approach things, but a few people pointed out something interesting, that they prefer a very different style. They like to go straight in, not waiting too long, not over preparing, not getting the foundations at the beginning, just diving into the skill and figuring it out through doing it. Almost like learning through immersion, even if it feels messy at the beginning. And I think both of these approaches are completely valid. Because the truth is, there isn't just one correct way to learn something. Some people need a bit of structure first, otherwise everything feels overwhelming, or others feel restricted by too much preparation and they only really understand things when they're in it. So I think the real takeaway for me was this. It's not about choosing the right method. It's about recognizing what actually helps you stay engaged and understand things properly, and then building your learning around that instead of forcing yourself into a style that doesn't actually suit you. And the last tip I want to give you is to know your why. This is something I've been thinking about a lot recently, because I've noticed that when I don't have a clear reason for something, I eventually just stop doing it, even if I enjoyed it in the beginning. Let me give you an example of my life. A year ago, after a concert I went to, I felt really inspired and decided to book singing classes. I had a couple of sessions and I really enjoyed them at the start. I was actually good at it, but now it's been 5 months and I haven't continued it. And I think the reason is simple. I didn't have a clear enough why behind it, or a plan that made it feel grounded in my life. It was more of an emotional decision in the moment rather than something I had really defined for myself long term. So now I realize, if I'm serious about learning something, I need to understand why I'm doing it. Not in a vague way, but in a way that actually pulls me back to it when I drift away. Otherwise, even something I enjoy can slowly fade away. So for me, this is something I want to be more intentional about. Finding the real reason behind why I'm actually doing something, why I'm learning this skill, and making sure it's strong enough to bring me back when I'm not motivated. So this is how I personally approach learning new skills. Not through pressure, not through intensity, but through small action, repetition, patience, and clarity. And I think the real shift happens when you stop trying to do everything perfectly and instead focus on building something you can actually return to. Now I'm very curious to hear from you. What's one thing you started learning before and didn't fail because of your ability, but because the why or the structure was just not strong enough? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!